This is Daryl, Louisiana Simple Living. So crop rotation is a critical gardening practice that will help ensure you have a bountiful harvest once your plants come to maturity. Cover crops is kind of a part of that discussion. I'll cover that separately in an upcoming video. So we're going to talk about crop rotation. Let's start now. All right, crop rotation, what is it? Not planting or avoiding planting the same type of plant, tomato, 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 corn, 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 in the same location that you planted it season to season to season. All right, so let's talk just a quick brief minute about crop rotation methods. How do you actually go about doing that? And I'm going to give you a couple examples. And there are a couple different ways that farmers and gardeners do crop rotation. There's what you'd call a simple method and a more complex. The simple method just pretty much means you're going to plant something this year, then something next year, then go back to what you had the first year on the third year. The simple method is just basically from year to year. You're going to swap out every other year. So you can plant a tomato or corn in one particular area. Next year we're not going to plant corn or tomatoes. We're going to plant something else. Then the following year we can come back with corn or tomato, whichever one we're talking about, right? So that's how the simple process kind of works. The more complex is it can involve up to 4 or 5 up to 7 even different kinds of crops that you're going to put in one particular location. Obviously you need a good bit of land, a really good sized garden to be able to do that. Also keeping in mind, like if we're talking raised bed gardens in your backyard, you may only have a 4x5 bed. This is going to be very difficult to do, other than try to do it as well as you can. And of course the specific methods based on the farmer or gardener's needs, how much land or how much garden they have. A farmer's got 15 acres he's farming, that's a different answer than, or a different solution than would be for here in our backyard garden. Let's go look at some examples for the simple and complex method of crop rotation. For example, with a simple rotation, some gardeners, they may plant corn the first year, like I said, or tomatoes. The next year they may go with soybean or some other type of bean, because beans fix nitrogen. And then of course corn is a very heavy feeder, so that makes a lot of sense. Put a heavy feeder, then put some kind of legume type of plant, a bean basically, because it brings nitrogen back into the soil. So you actually, the second year you're going to use that. Then you're going to come back the third year back with our corn. So it's kind of a simple process to go about, but it actually helps your plants, helps your soil, which helps your plants to be able to have a bountiful harvest. Another example is you can use, let's say, tomatoes, heavy feeder. You can go back the next season with something like clover. That's a legume as well. But there's also some different kind of cover crops that you can throw in. They have a number of different benefits around the cover crops, and you actually, typically you put those in at the end of the season. Like if you don't have a garden year round, you can put that in for the winter time, and then come early spring, you get in there and you actually dig those plants into the soil, and they then become compost over time. So the complex crop rotation method can be anywhere, again, say for 4 years all the way up to 7 years or more. An example is a 4-year cycle where you have corn, then you follow that with soybeans, then you follow that with wheat, and finally a cover crop of oats and radishes. Like in a 7-year rotation plan includes corn, then soybeans, and then wheat, then barley, then alfalfa, then a cover crop of clover and rye, and then potatoes. So it's just kind of adjusting it. It's each year you're kind of planting something different that the soil really needs. And the complex is just a little bit more involved, a longer term deal that you have different vegetables in different years, 4 up to 7. To summarize the different methods, you got simple and you got complex methods, and you can define it however you want. The farmer or gardener does it based on his needs and how much space he has, the resources, all those kind of things. And the ultimate goal of both methods is to increase the soil fertility and health, help kind of control the bugs or bad pests, and also helps with erosion control, which is probably a bigger need when you got a multi-acre conventional row garden. Nevertheless, but it can help here in your raised beds as well. All right, let's talk about the benefits of crop rotation. Number 1, increases the health of your soil. When you think about different plants, I've mentioned our different plants have different nutrient needs. Does a squash, tomato, corn, peas, peppers, beans, do they all have the same nutrient needs? The answer is no. So you got to think about that. If you continually plant the same plant in the same place, it's going to deplete that soil of nutrients, or at least the key nutrients that they need, or micronutrients. Now, yes, you can amend your soil each year. Yes, you can provide some organic nutrients to help it out, but it's best if it comes direct from the soil, and it just enables that plant to have a bountiful harvest. Crop rotation helps by balancing the nutritional needs by the crops in the soil. An example provided for the simple as well as the complex, I think I used soybean in there. And soybean is a legume. You could use any kind of bean, but it fixes nitrogen, so you use a bean somewhere where there's a heavy feeder. In that season, it's going to actually add additional nitrogen back to the soil even while you're growing a plant. So it's kind of a win-win. And so by rotating crops, you help balance nutritional needs. It allows the soil to be as healthy as it can be. And remember, feed the soil, not the plant. We got to focus on the soil and make it happy. The plants will be happy, as you can see in my garden, based on the soil. Now, number 2, it helps reduce soil-borne disease. You know, much of our disease comes from fungal spores or bacteria that's sitting on the surface or right under the surface of the soil. If you think about it, if we plant, let's say we take a tomato and it has early blight or late blight or whatever disease it may have. If we take that plant, it's got the disease, it's obviously got the disease from the soil underneath it, most likely. Pull that tomato. Next season we go and we put a tomato right in that same spot. What are the chances you think it's going to have that same soil-borne disease? And so it really just kind of breaks the cycle of plant-specific pathogen. And by crop rotation, if you can put a different kind of plant, something totally different than, you know, not just another, not a Cherokee purple that we pulled and we put a Martino's Roma tomato in the same area. It's the same kind of plant. It's going to have the same kind of disease, potentially to have that same kind of disease. You want to plant a different kind of plant. And that's the key thing. It just helps avoid the soil-borne disease and fungal spores and all that from getting you from year to year to year, and doesn't let it get as established in that soil. Hey, if you found this information valuable, please subscribe, like that video, feel free to share it. Now let's get back to the crop rotation video. All right, number 3, it helps control pests. And just like we talked about with avoiding the or controlling the soil-borne disease and fungal spores, same thing happens with pests, your bad bugs. If you have a particular type of plant, again a tomato, let's say it's got a tomato hornworm on it, if you got aphids, whatever you may have. So a lot of these cases, when you have a bug at the end of the season, goes down into the soil and they come back next spring. If you're going to have the same plant there, the same plant there, the same plant there, they're going to figure that out. It's inevitable you're going to have bugs, right? But what we don't want to do is give them the opportunity to get a foothold in one particular bed or one particular area, one specific part of the area that you're planting a particular plant year after year after year. Rotate them around, and that helps out tremendously. You know, and for example, squash vine borer, which I just killed about 7 or 8 of them in one squash plant, one summer squash plant. He's here, so if you're in this general area, 9A, probably up a little bit, and for sure down, they're definitely here. But again, I had 7 or 8 that was in a squash plant I just pulled. They're here, but anyhow, so once that larvae, once that grub goes and tunnels through the plant, kills it basically, what he does is he drops out and he goes underground. He's going to come up come next spring in that exact same location that he was feeding on last season. Hey, let's put a summer squash right there for him this season. Just doesn't make sense, unless you really want to make sure you get your plant killed by the squash vine borer, because they're very good at what they do. By rotating those crops, you can help control and manage the pest population and not let them get a foothold in that specific area of your garden. All right, benefit number 4, helps control erosion of your soil. And the way that rotating crops does, and it depends upon the type of crop, some are, all your crops are going to have different rooting systems, right? Crop rotation can help reduce soil erosion due to having your soil more fertile by improving soil structure and increasing organic matter in the soil. The different crops have different root systems. The deeper root system types of crops or the wider type of root systems, they do a very good job of, helping hold all that soil in. It also helps enhance, you still got all your root systems, so you got all your tunnels, let's just call it that, and for ability for the air to go down into your soil to be absorbed into the root systems. And because you got some really fertile soil, your root system is going to be very vibrant, robust, and it helps break up your compacted soil, and it improves water retention. So in short, root systems go a long way to help enhance the fertility and health of your soil, which leads to a more bountiful harvest. And I will say that cover crops, which I'll cover in an upcoming video, it does a lot of good for soil erosion as well. That's one of the primary benefits of cover crops. And the fifth and final benefit we'll talk about is it increases the biodiversity of that plot in your backyard. And just like each different plant attracts a different kind of bad bug, many of them and many of the cover crops and things of that nature really helps bring in pollinators. That also helps bring in beneficial bugs. But it increases that biodiversity underground as well. Crop rotation can cause a number of beneficial factors to help your garden in your backyard, whether it's a raised bed or it's conventional rows. It'll help you out from a crop rotation standpoint for soil health, soil erosion. It increases the biodiversity, all those benefits we just talked about. So think about it and give it a try and apply it if it fits within your garden and your resources. I'll put a link down below to my spring garden planning checklist. Check that out because it goes through a pretty good process of thinking about the things you need going into spring. If you haven't gone into your spring garden, or even if you have, this is a good checklist to be able to go and make sure you got everything you need. And if you like this content, do me a favor, subscribe. It means a lot to me. Like it, and feel free to share it to family and friends. Remember, this is Louisiana Simple Living, where we help you achieve a bountiful harvest, delicious food, and healthy living. Now garden on, and I'll see you in the next video.